Irina. I'm not going to pronounce your last name right. So how do you pronounce your last name?
So in Michigan, it's pronounced Ankoudinova.
Oh, yeah. I totally would not have
Can
got
you?
that. Do it slowly
So
again. How do you say your last name?
Ankoudinova.
Oh, awesome. So the time we met was at the recent Sung-hou Kim reunion. And so we were fellow alumni and you and I chatted briefly. And I was really just only operating on a few cylinders because I had so many of the sort of infrastructure things that the group had asked me to do with computers and all that stuff. And I George Church give me new presentations 2 minutes before. It was just like, I wasn't in my full capacity. So I apologize that when we interacted, I didn't catch enough, I think, of what you were talking about. So one of the reasons I wanted to do this pod is because I thought you'd work on some really things, some cool things. So I thought, why not do it on the Renaissance Circle? We are. So why you introduce yourself, your background, your sort of backdrop story, and we'll just go from there.
Yes. So I would just based on the questions you have in the in your document, because it's easy. I was born in St. Petersburg in Russia, in family of scientists. So my dad was a nuclear physicist, and my mom
Wow.
was a historian. She was a teacher in school, at high school. I was the third kid in the family, and both my brother and my sisters are physicists. I'm like an outsider biologist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have very good math background, right? I can graduate from very good school, and then graduate big university with biology and genetics degree. So that's and my passion in biology started when I was like in sixth grade. Like looking, I think it was like looking for answers, asking too many. Remember that everyone had many questions.
Uh,
Wow, so that's probably I didn't change at all.
so wait, one question though. So if you're a father nuclear physicist, your mother historian. Look, I came with the computer science and chemistry route, but one thing I've always run into is chemists and physicists see the world different. So biophysical chemistry, right? Because structural biology is that, right?
Because I think it's more like I feel myself more like an engineer, right? In because genetics, I think it's more my mathematical background. It's so much logic behind nature. If you think through genetic way of view, at the same time, it is. I've always had passions to test, to try. So that's why I went to all this gene engineering stuff and cell engineering stuff, and
Mm.
protein engineering stuff, right? So the natural me is especially crystallography, right? It's a model.
I made an assumption. So you said when you came to the United States working for Sung-hou was your first job.
So
But you were already, you already had a PhD at that point. Is that right?
no, why my is not that academic? Because I am science, but I had two kids. So
Yeah.
I started my family very early. And I had two kids and I had graduate school, didn't finish them both. It's just, that's it. So it was a,
Okay. So the life experience is the doctorate as far as I'm concerned. But so when you joined Sung Ho's lab, you were in your mindset, but what kind of work were you doing?
I was associate and doing first, I started verification.
Uh-huh.
And then so Yaru was going to leave and she was so big person in like crystallization, right? Crystallization is so beautiful. Sung-hou asked me if I'm gonna learn from Yaru and stay in her feet, stay in her.
Yeah.
So I was replacing Yaru in terms of in all of whatever she was managing. That's the story.
Oh, wow. That's mind blowing because people might listen to this, might not. So the key to any structural biology, crystallographic determination is getting crystals. And I remember Devenu had described a story again at a Gordon conference where Sung Ho was in this sort of magic of near exploration of crystallization conditions. And everyone was really excited and we're making phone calls. I remember Devenu describing this because you weren't allowed to publish at Gordon conferences. So Yoru had some very big shoes to fill.
Yeah. Yes.
So how
So
did
I
it's like, I
started.
imagine
I
this child
started.
in their mom's high heels. So how did you, that was big shoes. How did you do
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I think that was some, he saw something in me, so I really appreciate it. I can tell. So he talked to me like, because I was this from plant biology and from purified protein before, but I did a lot of molecular biology stuff, like building vectors, right? Like cloning, that stuff, PCR. So nothing to do with, right? I don't know, I just felt her before already, right? I started helping her running all of the screens, also all of this beautiful automation. They have this imager, like a stack of plates, and the robot arm, which was just taking the plate and move it and put an imager. So I'm like in my 30s, right? So it was like everything was in me, which is I'm
Yes.
allowed to do
Yeah.
practically. Frankly, can do science with my hands, with technology. Right. So I think it was a just good fit for my passion at the same time and for my ability, right? Skill to make it happen. That's
And so and where did you go after you spent 2 years in the sung-hou lab, sung-hou
a
chemist?
little bit over 2 years. And then there was like the plan, and there was no, I think it was big layoff. And
Okay. Wow.
yeah, and it was like the only computer scientists were left. Most of the people were
So I'm sorry, when was that? What years?
2000, let me see, into 2004 or into 2000. Oh, stop, no, hold on. Because my next job, I had addition. I worked for 7 months after that, and it was very fast transition. Maybe it was 2006.
Yeah. I didn't know that there were layoffs during that time. And went to USCSF, and then where'd you go from there? Or what'd you do at UCSF?
If you see, that's why I was unlucky there. So I just
Ah,
didn't like to work there. And it was just, like the lab, everything. It was,
yeah.
yeah. So at that point, I decided to move to industry. And when the next job was Sangama Therapeutics, which is genome editing company. And at that time, they were very like on the of tools because they were developing zinc fingers proteins and talents,
Yeah.
plant proteins. It was no CRISPR-Cas9 in the market at that time. So so it was huge, but it was slow, right? So we were building archives. Then CRISPR-Cas9 came first, and there was no competition with this. So we started using it, but again, there was a shortage of workforce, yes, and I was laid off again. Just so, and from that point around, and it was 2017, I looked around and I thought that a very good network, right? So because I worked in Sung-hou lab and so people still connect to me. I looked around and realized that it's so many interesting things going on in 2017. And Dell DNA encoded libraries came. NGS, also next generation sequencing at that time was big, right? And it was developed. During my time in Sangamo, we started from Sanger sequencing, you have like concatenating sequences and then demultiplex them, right? And I involved in it and I programmed. It was like, just wrote codes like that's the thing. I don't do it anymore. Yeah. And then it was nobody did it. And then like Illumina come, right? And
Oh, yeah.
different types of deep sequencing came. DNA encoded libraries at that time was very cool, very interesting problem solving because they use NGS. They use next generation sequencing, right? And the DAL DNA was used as a tag,
Yeah.
artificial library. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it's also I like technologies, and I always move with technologies. Yeah, and it's always disappointing when I was laid off because I had to start over. Yeah.
We want to come back to this because it's a couple of great examples. I wouldn't be surprised if even the initial lack of funding in the early 2000s in Sung-hou's lab might have been related to technology cannibalizing the previous generation of things, like your CRISPR-9, removing the need for what you're doing there. And you were hit right away. And so when we talk about AI later, AI absolutely is going to be doing that to a lot of software engineers and basically any engineering in my mind, any intellectual knowledge work AI is going to replace, but in the sense that people can then move to the next level and leverage it. So it's automated in that. But I'm curious about what sort of drives you with respect to the curiosity side of things. Yeah. With new opportunities, or after one thing is put behind you and you have to look for new opportunities, what's your driving force with what most interests you in terms of next project?
I think it's like manipulation, right? That's why said about engineering, right? Cell engineering or gene engineering, organism engineering, this type of things, right? And the automation just help to make it statistically correct, right? So scale it up, right? Or avoid the human errors. But technology itself, all this complicated stuff, this belt in encoded library, I think is a good example, right? And like you consider DNA as just a text, and then you can do whatever you can. You can synthesize any type of tag, link it to something like have a library of whatever small molecule peptides, whatever, right? And just drop it in a solution, right? And select for some reason. Like there was a kind of affinity assay. And they were at that time they were building this. Oh, that was so cool. I remember I was interviewed by Impossible Food in 2017. Remember this company?
No.
Possible, but do you know Impossible Burger?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was created by Stanford professor. So he founded the company. In Palo Alto, and they have DNA encoded libraries of small molecules to build a burger.
Wow. I bet you, though, their best burger was not a human designed. It probably was an accident, serendipity they accidentally found. But that's all other discussion. That's sort of trajectory. And actually, one of the most interesting things that I remember during the reunion was actually our conversation when you were talking a bit about Ukraine. You said you're born or you're in St. Petersburg, you said originally. And so, how did you
Yeah,
find your way to Ukraine before it's actually fast forward to today?
yeah. So my mom, she's Ukrainian, and
Oh,
she's from Kharkiv. And graduate from Kharkiv University, from the very like generation by generation, very like intelligent teachers, like
yeah.
all of these doctors, like the families, like it was just very educated people.
Yeah.
And when I was born in like before the war, 2024, right? Especially because I was living here, right? So it was like I didn't have feelings that were different. Mm. That's why it's much. This is so devastating. It's, if I speak and some with some Ukrainian people, they do not want to talk to me because I do not speak Ukrainian. And this is really sad, right?
Was it, but you speak Russian still, right?
Speak Russians, right?
They
Speak
just, they
Russian.
don't like to speak Russian because it's like, it's us, them kind of right away, just even the language.
Yeah, it is for Ukrainian. You mean for
Yeah.
current
Yeah.
modern
It's-
Ukraine? Yes, only my generation probably speak Russian. The young generation, this is an identity now. They do not want to talk Russian, right? Because they're so offended,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of pain. I understand it. Yes, it's create problems for us
So,
who wants to help.
and so let's talk about this. Let's go right to it because to a typical US person who sees it in the news occasionally now, and because it's this flood the zone, you don't really hear as much of what's going on. You hear a bit about the technologies, and I like to talk a bit about that as well as like the drone technologies that Ukraine's developed. And for being such a small country to fend off this gigantic Russia is just so impressive. But I think lot of people it's just back in their mind, they're not thinking about it as much as unfortunately, and a lot of focus is turned to the the Iran issue, and then all the other stuff. But the war is still ongoing, right?
Mhm.
And it's still there's a lot of pain and suffering. But Ukraine's been really doing incredible beyond expectation, right? For the size.
Right.
How many? First of all,
And
how many people are in, live in Ukraine, and how big of it by comparison? If you were to put states of the United States, how many states could fit within Ukraine? It's like California and Texas are really big states. Is Ukraine
uh,
smaller than those? Do you think?
smaller.
Yeah.
I think smaller, but I think okay, it's like whole Europe country, right? So I would compare it with like Serbia, so Slavic countries. Uh, that's it. Very agricultural and very technological country as well.
And how many people roughly? You don't know exact number. You're talking about 20, 30, 40, 50 million or less? I have no idea.
So how many people live in California?
Oh, I don't even know the answer to that. So that's too,
Okay, I would say
It looks like about 32 million, it says 32 to 30, about 40 million or so in 2026 is what I see.
Because I would check it. Yes, I don't want to tell any numbers because it's
Yeah, it's okay, but it gives a rough idea. It's sizable, but that's, I
yeah,
think,
this is 32 millions.
Los Angeles population, for example, I think is 3.8 or 4 million. So 10 times the size of one of our cities in California, right? But so it's not a lot, relatively speaking, but have been doing some incredible things. But then there are also a lot of people who fled. And that's one of the things that you want to talk
Yeah,
about.
I don't want a lot of stuff, right? But I know that they still have, for example, and I was impressed, they still have education going, educational institutions, right? Universities. And one of the institutes, like university, I want to connect eventually. It's called the Ukrainian Catholic University in Lviv. So it's the west of Ukraine. And I think they're not that bomb. I was thinking like Kiev, right? So in spite of all of this bombing and the very dangerous situations, they still live their life. It's amazing. And when I talk to you, some Ukrainians who can talk to me, like they're saying like, what I talked about soil conditions, right? So like it's changed every day, right? So that's why like in my project, I would say that I want to be prepared when it's done, right? Like, I cannot actually do something in the current conditions, right? Oh, nobody, me for sure, because I live in the US. If
Right.
anybody will do it, we have to find people who lives there, right? Maybe students, right? That's what I thought. Educational institutions, it's worse to communicate because it's young people and they're studying in Ukraine. Yeah. You want to interrupt? You want to
No, I
yeah.
actually, I was adjusting my screen because I was just looking at all the bordering countries around Ukraine, and I see that there's several there. And so I was trying to get at, there's a core of people that you might still have network and interact with that are still within Ukraine, but then there are also people who might have spread to surrounding borders. Would we be Poland and
So some people move to
Romania?
to neighbor countries, to neighbors countries. Some people move to abroad, but it was a very easy communication before the war. So again, young generation, they were studying in Europe, they were studying in US, also in Canada, like everywhere, and this connections was not destroyed. So the people still go back and forth. Some people serve in army, which is, I think it's mostly older people. This is also amazing policy Ukrainians have, right? So they're really saving their young people.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. You normally you see in wars the young get scooped up and pushed into war, and that's interesting.
Yeah, and here I think these people in their 40s, they just step in and go. They're definitely trying to use drones
Yeah.
instead of regular army, which is also so smart, right?
Yeah. No, it's incredible. In fact, I think war is just terrible, but the few things that come out of it, of course, are technologies that can better future civilizations. And I think drones, I think, will be one of those things. Instead of having literally hundreds of millions of dollars spent for a fighter jet, you could buy a swarm of $5,000, $10,000 drones almost at the Home Depot level and be just as effective. So I think it's gotten the US, I think, and others to really rethink. And again, it goes beyond just warfare, of course. And I want to talk a bit about the thing that we were talking about with respect to soil and soil reclamation. I hadn't internalized until even a little bit before the read and before we spoke that the Ukraine has incredible agricultural resources, not just rare earths, but just rich soils,
Yeah.
but that those have been contaminated and hammered down with constant artillery. And that's a significant problem. What's your thinking about that and trying to reinforce a community approach to?
That's what I've heard that people still grow something, but not in a big scale, right? Not for to sell. So again, maybe we better find the people there, yeah, who know better, right? And this is not the first country after the war, right? If we, for example, Czech, after the World War II, there was countries which were destroyed and they know how to deal with it. Or Israel, right? They also recover land very well, right? And they can share the experience. So I think it's doable. It's just it's just hard for me to find people who wants to do it with me. And then I would like to focus on this, right?
And so when I think about things like reclamation, whether it's soils or water, I know that there are industrial strategies to do this that require massive capital investments and large numbers of people. But I also think that nature has solved a lot of problems that we could just leverage. Plants, for example, could be incredibly helpful with water purification and helping,
I've heard about this too. Yes.
yeah, and bacteria that, and even,
Microbiomes.
yeah,
That's what
like,
I've heard. Yeah. So I've heard also, and I think we can also find a collaboration for somebody who knows about this, like microbiomes or plants, particular plants species. You can plant and then at least for one season recover to particular conditions, right? After that, maybe you can use it as a forest, or maybe you can use it as agricultural land to grow particular culture. Maybe not the wheat, but maybe something else like beans. So yeah, it's just a lot of information, which is I believe it's hard to digest.
it's sometimes easier to focus on a smaller sort of sub problem and build and see what works and just expand from there. And sometimes, and this could be joined with community concept, people have these plant a tree programs that are helping to basically address the deforestation issues on the other side of the planet, right? And to deal with the rising CO2 levels. And there's also getting together, and it might join in with some of your other hobbies. Maybe there's a cycling component, like cycle and plant a tree or something like that. But those are just sort of ideas thrown at a wall, right? But ultimately, if it can address a fundamental problem that Ukraine will be experiencing moving forward, and that's replenish things like soils and purify water and that type of thing, and also help bring community together. And if there's a younger generation has been protected a bit from the war, I was unaware of that, as you said, not completely, but at least it seems like mandatory combat might not be at the lower level and it's pushed higher in terms of age. That could be a strategic advantage for Ukraine as it looks forward.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it happens by purpose, right? So it's just somehow. I
Yeah.
also like I know that a lot of Ukrainian students come here to you. I just think that it would be great to find them somebody who wants to do something for them to come back. And as you mentioned in your doc, right? So in documents, it's like it maybe not permanently, right? It may be to run the project, right? Open the lab. I don't know. They can study how to do it, and if they're entrepreneurs, right? And study entrepreneurship or business, it would be great. If they already have some kind of an idea, right? We can help them to build it, and it would be pilot experiment, right?
Right.
Okay.
But it aligns with some of your passions that you indicated actually help drive a lot of your career. And it is some level of automation, but putting together basic building blocks that
Mhm.
maybe start small. It could be even very similar to what we were talking about earlier with what Yoru needed to do. And then when I don't think there was that robotic automation. There was a lot more manual, but exploring different things to form a crystal. And then the crystals are wonderful. And then once you form them, seed them, they can grow. And
Mhm.
it's always important to start with the seed. And what is that seed? And it could be a literal agricultural seed, right?
Yeah.
Or a seed of an idea, but it wouldn't necessarily need to be that it's people coming to the US. It could be, I mean, we're all well connected worldwide with internet and all that. There could be small community groups that an idea is the seed and it can grow from that. So a lot of things to explore with that. But again, I like to just brainstorm with these things because it's rare that someone can design a project and it just goes from beginning to end and it achieves everything by design and everyone smiles and moves on. It's almost always the side products or accidents, the serendipitous accidents that as long as you're observing, you can take hold and run with those. And it never fails. Those are often the most successful projects.
Yeah, but what I think is just trying to figure out what is more important to build kind of a knowledge graph about soil conditions in the different countries or in a different environment, right? And what the people doing with them, right? Or looking for the people who really would run in whatever, who would run some kind of a pilot companies, a pilot business, pilot project, right? To recover, could be also construction of the buildings, right? It's
So
not exactly soil. Soil
yeah,
is just sounds environmentally needed, right?
yeah.
That was like they just to come back to the same conditions. It's like motivation for the person to come and build country or their land back to whatever it was. Because Ukraine is so beautiful. I mean, yeah. With-
I don't know how much of the data are available with, say, Google Earth. It might not be current, certainly, and but who knows with some of the drone coverage, there might be opportunity to get a lot more of the imagery. I just heard this real interesting entrepreneur discussion on one of my favorite podcasts, My First Million, and this guy had developed this business that was smashing down trash in large dumpsters because it just saved the business's money by doing that, and he took a percentage of the proceeds. But the more interesting thing was how it started, or how he scoped it out. He said he engaged someone overseas to take basically Google Earth images and put pins in every major area that had dumpsters that you could see from Google Earth, right? And that he identified clusters, and he actually literally went to each one of those in his early formation, but of a company. But you can envision doing something similar with either drone coverage, or maybe people submit drone coverage to an environment site where people can, without jeopardizing military secrets, but basically showing areas that need rebuilding or reconstitution at the soil level. And from images, you can drive a lot of information and identify regions for which there's opportunity to rebuild, reclaim, purify, whatever. So it's collecting. When you said knowledge graph, that's the first thing that came to mind is like, what's the domain space that you could zero in on? And there might be a lot of that data available that it's just a couple days of AI doing the coding for you to generate that map, right?
And it's not, it is only about digital images of the soil. And I think it's also another information which we may need, right? So, the soil conditions, so soil microbiomes,
Yeah.
current microbiomes,
Right.
that could be available in a different,
Yes.
not in a different way. I believe that's what I thought about Israel, right? So when they uh, recover soil
Yeah.
or recover lands, right? When they just instead of desert, they have regular crops or palm trees or something which never grew before, right? Recycling water, right? This
Yeah.
is recycling projects or something like this. So there are countries who recover their sources.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, with respect to imagery though, just so you can appreciate, because I do this stuff all the time, it's about building a data set of training for AI to work with, but images contain information that we often humans overlook. And if you can couple that with sampling of, say, small core samples of the soil that might have a certain composition, the AI systems can actually help correlate imagery to what's in the earth. And so then you could use that to identify other regions. So, for example, there might be a certain contamination that has a certain coloration that we just didn't observe, or maybe just the fact that there was a shell explosion in the area we might have missed. Those kinds of things, as long as you build up enough observations for a training set, you can build AI systems to do that sort of thing. But that's just first identifying sort of scope of problem. And who knows, there might be people, again, back to your cycling. Maybe there's people cycling throughout the countryside that snap a photo, upload an image, and make a note or two, annotation.
Mhm.
That could go a long way. You'd be surprised. It's just the key.
Right. Right. So yeah, cyclists coming everywhere. So, yeah, right? And they're mostly taking picture of themselves. And
That's
something
fine
around.
as well. No, in fact, more information, the better. Maybe they might not like having a selfie of themselves, but the key with all this stuff, with any AI systems, I always come back to this. One of the biggest challenges is getting a good data set and to train
Mhm.
on. And you have to pay money often to do that. But how can you do it in a way where you get people that are mission driven to help you collect that data? And
Mhm.
maybe you align it with things like cycling and a social element to it. So where people post images of themselves against the land and say, oh, I drove by this crater of a shell or whatever. You know what I mean? Say that if there's dividends paid for people that are incented to go do it and they get a dopamine rush by contributing to that population of data, you spend less money in collecting the data. So it's something to think about.
Right.
It's
So
like a,
yes, yes, totally. I mean, find an idea who can attract people who can contribute to this. Right. So contribute to, for example, if it would be images, which is yeah. And in my class, like I just completed, I've heard a lot how images is so digital imaging really helps to find patterns which
I-
human cannot find. Right.
so it's fresh in your mind. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just getting the images themselves is just the first pass, but getting then data associated with those images that ideally, without having a human annotate those image sets, if there's a way to do it where it's automated in some way or for example, a real simple example. If you take a picture and from an iPhone, there's meta tag information typically of the geolocation, right? I would argue, and this is just because I've seen a lot of imagery that are taken from satellites, that if with big enough data set of images, you could probably build a model that takes images input and predict with strong degree of confidence the location of that image as long as you had enough data to do that. But so you didn't have to manually curate where that image was taken because it was annotated automatically from the metadata of you taking a picture and your phone has the satellite geolocation stuff. So that's what I mean by not having a direct human supervised annotation. If there's data that can be annotated as it's collected without humans having to type in or put their expertise in it, and that
Yeah,
could
but
be,
people supposed to share these images, right? So like
yeah,
if we're thinking about cyclists, right?
yeah,
They want if they sh- if they want to share, if they want to share it. What I thought about, like for example, field constructions, right? In US constructions, when they construct any type of building, there is a lot of regulations,
yeah.
right? How to start and I think it's connected to soil conditions, right? If it is a gas station, so it was contaminated, what we're gonna do if we want to build something on this? What we're gonna do? This information could be also useful.
That's really interesting. I have a pal who's working in it might be more residential, it could be commercial as well, permit space, where he's derived large databases of this content and licensed the database content. And I
Mhm.
have talked with him in the past. Have you considered using Google Earth type imagery, which can get down pretty low, but then
Mhm.
extract that information out and maybe correlate that with the degree or ease with which you could get permits? That might be pretty interesting.
Right? So maybe we can do something like this, right? So Google Earth. I never thought about Google Earth like in this type of application.
Yeah, and what amazes me all the time is when I work with these coding agents, whether it's I mentioned this when I at the reunion talk when I use like Claude Code or Codex with OpenAI or Gemini from Google, I will just brainstorm ideas like we are right now, and then say, "Can you go and get data for me?" And it builds the necessary code, finds the necessary like APIs, and if it requires like Google authentication, it'll open up a window for me to log in, and then goes and downloads a bunch of data, and then does like preliminary experiments. And these are the kinds of things you could do to explore certain ideas. And again, doing it locally here in the US is really helpful because my guess is Google imagery in the US might be a little more current with some things.
And
Just
not like that's other questions, right? So how current it is, right? So is
yeah,
it like this year or 2 years? What is the increment of imaging on Google
yeah,
Earth?
yeah.
Is it
I
better
know.
or what?
So I know that when we were doing solar, it was early 2020 ish or so. They took Google Earth images of our roof, and I saw the front yard landscaping, and it was actually fairly current because we had changed it. We went from like grass to drought resistant stuff, and so I knew it was within a couple years that it had been updated. Well,
And when you go on and taking Google directions and see the view of your house, you see it's in 2022. This,
but and it was fairly recent when I last looked. And I can also tell because we live near a track, and I can tell when
uh,
the field is beaten down from the kids. But no, it can be fairly current for a lot of things, but just rich data sources that are accessible is what I was meaning to say. And I'll just turn it full circle just to the world that you and I have lived in as an example. But I didn't want to do too much about me. I want to talk about the stuff you are interested in. But
this
I
is kind of an idea. I just
yeah,
think this just
but
worth to try.
so the point about data being available, right? And everyone knows in our space about AlphaFold, and it can predict protein structures and all, and from sequence. And it's given me a lot of ideas and how they actually represented inputs into the fold model. And recently I've developed some methods to do what I call foundation models that ask simple questions that are aligned with what you actually do in a compound screening campaign, right? And a lot of times people just prioritize compounds that they can source from vendors to do first pass screens. And they just try to come up with metrics that make it diverse enough. But some of the technologies that we've been able to build a model that can ask a question just like you would do in a prioritization and build a pretty large data set of training examples from a fairly moderately sized training set, but just positioned in a way as you've asked your question. So one question is, given a target and these two choices of molecules, which is the more likely molecule to bind the target? So it's a comparative question. And often that question isn't asked. But by doing that, you ask it in a certain way, you increase the number of training examples markedly. And so we built models to do ligand, sequence, ligand, where you don't even look at the protein structure, you just take the sequence and the two-dimensional structure ligands. And it's been really predictive. And then we've gone the other way where we have sequence, ligand, sequence, where we say of two proteins, if a molecule is given a choice, which way would it go? And we've gotten some really good predictions of this just by reframing the question. And then just lastly, literally doing this morning, just throwing out an idea at you. I have this technology we developed over the years that searches the conformational space in small molecules. We call it pharmacophoric fingerprinting. And we found a lot of times this is very useful to help rank compounds on how they might interact with a biological target. But it's really expensive computationally because you have to conformationally search these small molecules and get the 3D conformations. And then you look for triplets of pharmacophores and you make a fingerprint. I have a large data set of small molecules that I've pharmacophoric fingerprinted. And that's a great example of not having the human annotate because it's computationally on each side built. So I built this large data set. Actually, I started with screening compounds of small molecules, calculated the pharmacophore fingerprints, and then built a model to say, let's take as input a smile string, which is a 2D representation of the ligand, as input and predict directly the pharmacophoric fingerprint. And stunningly, it's incredibly predictive. Whoa, this model learned basically the conformational analysis searching and the pharmacophoric stuff. And it's like, it goes from taking, say, a minute or two per molecule, the fingerprint, to fractions of microsecond. And wow, I have this crazy powerful model that keeps growing in its capability as I add more data to it. And it has a long monologue there, but the point is it's examples of using fairly small data sets and exploding those to large training sets and rephrasing my question. That's a more practical question anyway, to match this explosion of a data set. So these are the kind of things, maybe I put some ideas in your mind, but I did it at the small molecule protein level. But you could do this in any kind of project. How can I proliferate examples that might be limited in number, just massively through some computational method, and then reframe your AI thinking around it such that you can build a training set so that you have a model that's really useful?
Yeah, okay, but as far as I got it, let me say something. So making a small pilot experiment again, right? For example, with soil, right? Somewhere, maybe in a safe place in US.
Yeah.
And then, but so trying to solve the the problem we want to solve, right? So then get your results, get your output, and this would be a starting point from the model, right? And then I don't know, and then add data somehow, right, based on whatever questions you ask, right? And the idea is that you maybe you have to start with the goal, right? What do you exactly want to get? Or maybe, or you're saying that you would rephrase it, reframe it, and then it would help you to add additional data and train your models more and more and more and more.
So think about the soil situation. Okay. So first and foremost, you might have imagery of what Ukraine looked like prior to the war with satellite or Google Earth or something. Okay. The first step I would say is, okay, let's try to pixelize it, find major segments of that, and match what other parts of the world have very similar types of visual appearance. Ideally close to home, maybe in the Bay Area, maybe back in Tilden Park, there's regions of forestry that you could say, oh, that matches, right? And so if you can find a surrogate that's close to what it used to be, you could do local experiments, even to the point of crystallization conditions in a laboratory situation. We have soil representations and you systematically contaminate each one of those areas or something. That's getting down really into the weeds, but there might be ways that you can take imagery from where you really want to deal with it, put it closer to home and where you have more data. And then you could build models around that. And then it ultimately gets back to how you could predict on the original source, which was Ukraine. See what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I got it. I think it's maybe it's already exists. What do you think? This type of information, right?
You know what? And it's amazing if it's just knowing where to look. Okay. It might not be Google Earth. It might be the self-driving cars. Maybe there's content that it's capturing with its cameras in their driveway as they're driving. Now, Tesla giving that out or Waymo giving that out is probably not going to happen. But the point is there's other industries that often have, it's like they're garbage. They don't really care about it, but it's your goal.
Okay, like commercials, right? So maybe something like in the movies, right? Because I know this very beautiful movie, Brian, about Ukraine. Everything is illuminated, right? So it was like a fields of sunflowers. Right? I don't know
Oh,
where they just actually shoot it. Maybe in Ukraine, maybe not. It's just
there must be databases of this stuff because when you see Hollywood or movies that are made, they're often not shot in the location where they're supposed to be showing. It's somewhere or like
that's what I
Mars
mean,
mission.
right?
Huh?
Yeah, but maybe it's not exactly the same. The Ukraine, like all whatever they were looking.
Yeah,
Egypt.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Like, yeah.
there might be things in Arizona that look like Mars, and that's people do. So it's sorry, you have to think outside of your domain for that kind of thing. But I don't know. I'm just trying to tickle some thinking with respect to that. And I know that at the end of the day, it's always about how do you get people to help you because individuals, these are boil the ocean projects, right? You can't just do it on your own. How do you engage people? And as I get older, I just
It's about open sources, right? So because the imaging with Google Earth is open, right? So so something else. I don't know. Movies are open. Also, it's just you can
yeah.
watch them.
Yeah, that's something to think about. Unfortunately, that might be biased to the set because a lot of those movies are shot in locations like the
Like
same location.
yes,
They're made
yeah.
after
Maybe I should
falls.
forget about movies. It was just an idea, right?
Yeah, I know. But it again,
Some
it's about
documentaries, at least, right? Documentaries when they shoot documentaries, right? So maybe it should be made because it's low cost. If it's low cost, they don't have this much money to go where they like it.
we might be overthinking it. Like of the several million people that are younger in Ukraine, for example, if they became aware of an app that we somehow got people to spread it, almost like a chain letter concept, like, hey, you spread it to your friends, that they just take a selfie of themselves in the countryside. And the purpose of that is we could give the overall mission of, hey, we're trying to get an idea of how the countryside has changed and basically identifying areas which could use improvement, reclamation, or whatever. But it's the people who can collect the data for you have to have some incentive And a lot of times it's a social thing. Like I'm doing this for the mission, or it could be a viral thing. Remember people throwing ice over their heads and stuff? But there could
Yeah.
be
And
some
everyone
kind of
wants to
gimmick.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you have to get it spread around. But having the data collectors collect the data, just giving insight. We're building an app called Food Health, and I just threw it out there because I didn't want to have to keep distributing to my friends locally. So I just put it in the App Store. And one of the things in that is showcasing your food. And we've got a handful of people who do that. They take a picture of the food and they showcase it, and really helpful because it's pretty cool. It shows where they're doing it in a rough area, not exactly where they're doing it, but a rough area. And it's becoming foods throughout the world, right? And the foodies are amazing. They just like showing off their stuff. Look what I made, or look what I'm eating. So there's a drive sometimes. How do you get people to do that about the countryside? It's something to think about. Again, it could be the background imagery that's important and not the main foreground.
Also, like if they make a good food, right, or whatever, if they prepare food from whatever they collect,
Yeah.
it is tell us an idea, give us an idea how they actually live, right?
Yeah. I'd say, look, again, I'm just throwing some
Yeah.
ideas out
So
at you.
social, that's what, yeah, the social networks is really, yeah, maybe a resource for this project.
Yeah. But so with this, I guess I jumped right on this concept for you, from displacement to reconnection. That seems like it's just a big driving force. And if people are that patriotic that they don't even want to speak Russian, they'd rather speak Ukrainian just because it's us versus them again. There's definitely a patriotism that you might be able to tap into. So that, yeah, the reconnection to the people who've been displaced, they might not be comfortable coming home yet, but they want to be connected.
Yeah, and make something for their country from here, from safe place.
And so there's often a family member who's left, but one that's remained, right? And just like the fax machine, you can't just sell one fax machine, you need two, right? There's fax from, and so having things on both sides is pretty helpful with respect to trying to find ways to leverage network effects. So what if there was a photo exchange? Yeah, like where am I today? And where's my family today with countryside imagery or something? There you get a 2-for-1. Plus you get a way to spread the concept and word. I don't know. Think about stuff like that, because that's at the end of the day, whatever you build, whatever new idea, it's going to take multiple people beyond yourself, and network effects
Yeah,
dominant.
the one thing which worried me that it's like if it is legal, like because it's a military zone now, right? So
Uh,
yeah, I have no idea, right? So because I
I,
don't just
Dude, so yeah, in fact, I just heard it's been under martial law since 22 or something like that. And so maybe they're not allowed to take pictures. I don't know.
right, I believe that's it's not allowed,
Ah,
or at least allowed maybe in the buildings, right? Maybe not. I have no idea. Better to check, right? So
yeah,
then we
it's some,
meet this idea.
yeah, look into it. But again, the purpose of, look, I was just hoping to just chat with you and brainstorm a little bit. And I think any of these
What are you
projects,
doing with this type of podcast? How it works? Like maybe because if we publish this podcast, maybe we would find somebody in the US who would be interested in participating, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I think.
absolutely.
Especially
So,
young students, I really like to connect with them, and I have
so,
no idea how to.
so what I'll do, and I'll probably cut this part out, but I'll take the full video. And first pass is just cutting out a bunch of the ums and or. I often do this, filler words, right? And there's systems that do that. So I get this pruned down, just begin and the end. And I'm taking transcript in 2 spots. One, Zoom does it. And another, I have something called the script called Whisper, that is taking what we're speaking and converting to text right now. And then I have it munched on an AI system I built that works with my voice and my previous podcasts and Substacks, and generates a storyline.
Okay.
And so I'm not going to release anything to anyone until you have a chance to see whatever I would do anyway, just so you know. And I have a bunch of ones I've done where people say, yeah, I don't want anyone to see that. So it just sits in my archives. But for this, it would get it. I think a theme is the AI will probably pull out a set of themes and it will have I think a decent full video, but very few people watch those full videos. And I'll put it in maybe a Substack or Medium at one point. But then I have a thing that I call viral shorts that now takes a minute or two segments and constructs what might be viral. And then I put them on YouTube. And sometimes I do
Like a teaser, like it's like a teaser, right? So like so for people
exactly. And it's funny, I put one up the other day. It was in prep for the reunion because I wanted to give a background. Sung-hou told me, don't give too much of your background, just talk about future stuff. And I was okay, okay, because we've all done a lot of stuff, right? But I've lived in AI for all these years, so there's a lot of cool things I want to talk about. So I munched down into a small short, my history of AI. And I touched a little bit on that in one of my slides during the reunion, but the theme was I had all this hair and now I don't, right? And it was showing different segments of my career, me losing hair, but also with what I'd done. And I made a short and I just put it out there. It's got 25,000 views on YouTube.
And that's what people like. So
Well, yeah, they're bored by the neural network stuff, but I think I got a lot of comments on there. You have more hair than I do and stuff like that. So it's pretty funny. But that's the kind of thing.
It's funny, right?
Yeah.
My topic is very serious.
Oh, no. It's amazing what the viral short technology, it's not technology, it's more prompting and stuff, but it comes up with 10, it can give me 10 different shorts and then we could pick one or two. And that might be something that's, it doesn't cost a lot of money to even promote it, push 50 or $100 over a month or two, and it could get 100,000 views and we could focus it in the European area, in particular in Ukraine. And you'd be surprised. Could take off or not. You might, if there is like a signal where people are saying, oh, this is interesting, or we see a number of views that increase, we could create a domain like Rebuild Ukraine or something. I don't know. A simple domain, simple website, no cost stuff. And maybe people post it.
Blog, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so just like I did with Sung-hou, which I'm going to push again now today, I think, or tomorrow, it's because Devanu said, hey, why don't you do a specific thing called stories? I don't know. Did you see the email? Do a story. But there might be some interesting stories that people want to tell. And who knows? Maybe it's just a storytelling thing between.
This is the biologist stuff. He really likes stories. But because everyone likes to tell stories.
But that's how humans' brains work. We remember things by stories.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think short stories are great. Long stories are sometimes you lose your attention. But I think the more senses people touch on in their stories, like the smell of the flowers or the gunpowder or something in the air, right? If it's visceral, it sticks, right? And so who knows, maybe someone hasn't done that yet. Stories could be anonymous, just like what their life is today in Ukraine with family members who might have moved out, how they are different or something, or how they're the same, they have the same rituals or something. But
no, I believe that this is very big, it has very big value, but you can learn it with it like a dialogue, short story dialogue. Okay.
No, the point is that I do this often with, what was it? I think it might be Claude. Either Claude or I think it's Claude. It's on my iPhone. And on walks sometimes there's a speaker that you can talk to. And I'll just have, like I'm talking on the phone, talking to Claude with brainstorming ideas and just free form discussion. And you could just sit at home one day and just do that with ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, talk about some story or just some ideas. And then, because you might be saying things like, oh, that reminds me of when I was a child. And then later say, can you summarize a short story for me based on that? Because I want to post it in this short story web environment. Look, I already have the technology built that we can help you with this. I have these circles. It's Toast Our Friend circles. We could just make simple modification, which is what I did for the Sung-hou stories. It's like identical. And there's also a Sung-hou Kim, Toast Sung-hou Kim, but we could do something, literally be minutes of my time, and I'm happy to help you out, where it would be reconnect with family and maybe an iteration or two, make the circle available, buy a $25 a year domain. And so it's linked to it. And we could do a quick short, put it out there and see if people could start telling stories. And who knows, maybe that's the seed that we're looking for you to get ideas, capture content.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, at least it is something interesting, and I would like to learn it as well. So
Oh, yeah.
it's a different fields, right?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Everywhere.
you should be doing this stuff all the time. And unfortunately, a lot of people just are not aware how easy it is to do. You just can Google Claude Code, Claude, Claude Code, download it on your PC or Mac. I do this stuff on my laptop, my Mac, and it does some basic install, it does it all, and then opens up a little chat window. And you just can type into it. I talk into it using the Whisper, WISPR technology. And
That's because I use Claude a lot.
yeah,
Yes,
but
but
you
I
don't
just
want to use you don't want to use the browser or even the app that comes up. You have to run. Do you have a Mac or PC?
I have PC.
Okay, so the PC, you open up a terminal window and you can have Claude Code download your PC and you run it in the terminal session. And that way you run it with what I call, it's actually YOLO or dangerously something. I forget the switch, but I run it where it doesn't keep prompting you, say, is it okay to do this? And you just say, yeah, just do it. You put it in a directory system and you make sure it only works in that directory system, a sandbox, but you can have it code for you by just talking to it like this.
So that's wow. That because I didn't know that. I thought if you open the terminal, right? You
Yeah.
can just
Yeah. Oh,
particular command.
I haven't
How
touched,
code allow you? Wow.
oh,
Okay.
I have not touched code in almost a year now. I refuse to look at code right now. And I'm a software engineer by training, right? So it's
Just natural language, right? So you just
natural language. In fact, you might even be able to speak into it in Russian for all I know. Yeah.
I'm sure that I can speak Russian.
Yeah. So here's another story, by the way. The title, When Technology Kills Your Technology. That was the headline. Irina's career has repeatedly put her at the edge of technology just as the next one arrived.
It's true, right?
Yeah. So in Genome, if that's how you say it, you work with Zinc figures and TALENs. I don't remember. Well, and powerful tools for genome editing. Then CRISPR arrived. Instead of fighting the change, she moved on and moved with it. The same pattern followed her advances in DNA sequencing and DNA encoded libraries, which, by the way, I'm not a fan of Dell. That field is particularly relevant today with AI. New technologies don't just replace old tools, they change what is possible and allow us to move up a level. Irina's career offers a simple lesson. Don't become attached to the technology, become attached to the questions you're trying to answer.
But for example, now it's drive me also like this. I think my last job was it's in startup, and they now just no startup anymore. But it just let me think that now everything should be connected with ML tools, right? Whatever decision is made should be made based on broad knowledge, like in the broad deliberations, not like on whatever is this small startup is doing. Otherwise, you just lost.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And so I guess the reframing for me, because I'm not the one who would say, let's ask Claude or Gemini or Codex, how do you cure cancer? Or I don't ask it for answers as much as I ask it to build the tools that I know need to be built in order to answer my question. You've been thinking for much of your career as an engineer, but I know you probably think as a scientist at times as well. And those two think very differently. Scientists will have curiosities that go out there and, whoa, how do we explain this? How do we explain that? And engineers have tool sets to build. And so you just have to tell the engineer to build things to help you answer your questions. Think of all of the AI today as just a way to rapidly build those tools to help you answer your questions, but not to answer your questions. It's a subtle distinction. And that's one of the reasons I think Anthropic is the leader, because they focused on code development. And a lot of the future of AI is having code built to answer the questions that people are asking, but people directing what code needs to be built.
Is it the same like you don't need to invent the wheel, right? You have to ask good questions and find that whatever. So you
Yeah.
ask, I really like this. So you ask Claude to make a tool to answer your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And you
Right.
don't do it through the browser. You don't do it through the Claude app. You do it in the terminal with Claude Code. Or Codex is OpenAI's version of that, and Gemini has one as well. So you pick whichever one. My biggest beef today is that Anthropic has this Fable model. I mentioned this a couple times.
I've heard.
Yeah, it's
What is that?
incredibly powerful with coding, and anything related to biological sciences, they keep to themselves, Anthropic, and they say, "Oh, we won't let you use our best model to build the tools. We'll use our lower model." So I have to suffer with that. But when I had access to it, I was crazy productive. It was like building tools left and right, redoing a ton of the technologies I built over my career really quickly, which is necessary. Now I get the same prompts I gave months ago. Claude will refuse to answer it under Fable and pushes me down a level. So it's a little frustrating there. But again, it's use it as an engineer. So start thinking really more as
With
just the
this, okay.
scientist. Yeah,
Was the same way like with Ukraine project, right? You also like not because my idea is too broad. Really.
break it
You
down. Break it down.
can break it down.
Yeah, some of these models will help you break it down, but I think you could probably break it down as well. So I think if you could turn every person who has questions into a scientist, which is what I'm talking about, we as a world will be a better place, but we need engineers to implement. 'Cause scientists, they can't build the machine as efficiently as the engineer
As
can.
an engineer.
But so you have your ideas, your questions, just tell the AI to build the machines to help you answer those questions and treat it as an
Okay.
engineer.
Okay, that make me only I'm really excited. I just want to try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Give it a shot. It's amazing. So I don't know if you internalize it. I said it quickly and I was off and on the microphone, but when I presented all those apps that I had built, every one of those were natural language, me just talking to Claude like you and I are
My,
talking.
my favorite one is that AI. I'm
Yeah.
studied
Yeah, I
like that.
did.
Such
Yeah,
a
it's really interesting, that one. So I built that on my dad's 60,000 emails I had with him over 10, 20 years. I primarily communicated by email, and it was really helpful. It helped me get through a lot of grief side as well, mostly the
sure.
anger, but I got through that. And it was pretty good answering questions, but as things continued on, it had stale information, right? No new content. So I started to make it enabled where I'd add information to it post mortem, and it got a little better. But I clearly thought if I add information continuously, it's going to get a lot better. And that's why I made my AI Steve, which is taking information in as we speak, literally text, emails, everything, right? Back there is it's literally
My God. Is it a big brother?
for me, yeah. But
Oh,
the more information it gets in, it's unbelievably powerful it becomes. So it's that sort of next level stuff where you want to have as much. I have videos, pictures taken out of videos, everything like that, analyzed. And, like I just started doing the goatee thing, and my AI Steve says to me, "You look a little bit better with the goatee. Stick with it." I'm like, okay, I don't need that. I don't need that stuff. But the point is, it's like that. There's a lot of incredibly valuable information we throw out every day. But in terms of being able to use it, every single day I use it. Every single day. And it's really to make me a better, more efficient scientist and question asker, because I get more answers delivered to me by code being built. And it's so cool. When you start experimenting more with just code built for your ideas, you could say, build me a social media site to have people exchange stories and iterate with it in a day or two, you'd have it, right? It's amazing.
okay. Do you have to pay for this? Because I'm using mostly free versions. Like,
Yeah. 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 I always take
and then we
that for
try to
granted.
figure out
Yeah.
is it worse?
I do
It's
pay for
worse, right?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I do pay for the maximum version that you can pay for each one of them. I mean, it's business, it's expensive. It's a couple $100 a month. But then I have API access I pay for as well when I go beyond that. So yeah, I always take for granted when I say all the stuff I do spend money on those AIs. It's nothing's free, but the way I look at it is I run a company of about 12, 15 people. I easily have about 200 people effectively working for me by spending an extra $2,000 a month with AI. So yeah, it's a no brainer. It's a no brainer.
That's an interesting approach.
Yeah. But you can get away with some things with free, but you might have to spend at least $20 a month to do some of the stuff. But you have some great ideas. I think you can imagine having a full-time programmer working for you.
No, thinking I got some kind of, it was a brainstorming actually. I like that. So
Yeah. You're fresh off it. Lastly, we'll leave you on this and because I will edit and stuff. But what was the course you took?
Oh, just,
It's out of mind.
yeah, no, I just cannot talk yet. It's my friend. Okay, we're gonna finish.
Yeah, finish on this. Yeah.
Go to the, yeah. What was the question?
What was your class that you took? The MIT class.
Yeah, it is a online class. It's called Machine Learning and Artificial Intelligence for Pharma and Biotech.
Wow.
And it is made for scientists, for different chemists, clinical studies, for pharmaceutical companies, right? Not for the people who are, if I knew how to code, how to use, how to write this, make this machine learning tools,
Yeah.
would be probably better. Because for me, it was all complicated because I had to go back to my knowledge, which I haven't used for a while. All this graphs, I just have no idea how it works, all this algorithm. But the applications and the way how the class is made, I usually take Coursera classes if I want to learn something because it's cheap and fast, 6 weeks, and you got some ideas and you may not need to pay. But this class is the regular class. I get certificate after that.
Nice.
And I can tell they have assignment, which no matter what, you have to go through all of this information and then just digest it and create your project and work with this and to answer the questions. So that's, for me, it's very useful. Yeah. MIT, yeah. So when they know what they're doing, right? How to educate people. And they take from us, I think they take also the good feedback. They know what people, because there is a lot of discussions, right? They know what people in pharma and in biotech wants to know, what they want now. Oh, yeah, okay, like it's, and yeah, so they react, right? So and I think they're also users as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our feedback.
No, look, we actually went long and I have to run anyway, but it's
yeah,
great.
me
I'll clip up a little bit, send you an email. We'll do this again. We'll talk again. It doesn't have to be podcast, but let's keep in touch. But I will see you in email soon.
I'm really happy and lucky that I talked to you.
Yeah. No, it's fun. It's fun. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.